So, Kitty, you're running your own practice now, and you still find time to get involved in the political arena for nurse practitioners in the state of New Hampshire. Can you tell me some more about that?
Yep. I became president of the New Hampshire Nurse Practitioner Association in 2000, and I did 2 consecutive terms, so I finished in 2004. During that time, occasionally nurse practitioners would be invited to serve on committees or whatever, and we would put out an appeal, and an invitation came to serve on a governor's task force for health care or something like that. And no one would take the bait. So because we felt if you're not at the table, you're on the menu, somebody had to be there. So I'm like, all right, I'll do it. I'll go. So I went to these meetings, and there were 4 factions. I don't remember now what they all were, but one of them was Access. So I chose that one. Access to care, and had discussions about access to care and where that would go, that sort of thing. I knew that it was important for nurse practitioners because we would improve access to care, and this is early to mid-2000s. And some of these meetings, one thing led to another, and there was this huge use of acronyms. It made me crazy in these meetings because I couldn't remember what all the letters stood for. And there were things being floated around like PCMH, and I spent so much energy in trying to figure out what it was they were talking about that I completely missed the meat of the subject.
The big picture.
The big picture.
Yeah.
I just couldn't get it. In 2006, I hired Sean Lyons to come to work for me.
Is he a family nurse practitioner or
He
adult?
is a family
He is
nurse
family.
practitioner also. And what I very quickly learned was that where I read Grisham novels, Sean reads policy. He gets the same pleasure out of reading policy that I get out of Grisham novels. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. However, all that alphabet soup made incredible sense to him. Mm-hmm. And so we were having this big meeting, and I said, Sean, you have to come with me because I don't get it. I need you there to explain it to me.
Right.
So he went with me. He was very excited about this meeting. And what I know now in retrospect is that this whole process was laying the groundwork for the pilot study that was sponsored by Anthem in 2009.
And this is looking at medical homes.
Looking at medical homes.
So the acronym was?
The PCMH was Patient-Centered Medical Home.
Right.
That was one of them.
And this was a federal, this wasn't state, this was a federal mandate that was being done in the states?
No, it was a multi-state pilot. I don't remember what all of the other states were, but there were 10 or so of them. I do know that Colorado was one of them. Mm-hmm. And Jean McAllister and Carl Cooley, Jean McAllister is a nurse, Carl Cooley is a physician, were heading up the PCMH, the Patient-Centered Medical Home Initiative for the state of New Hampshire. And Jean and Lisa Carpenter, who is the executive director of the Nurse Practitioner Association.
And by trade as a lawyer.
And by trade as a lawyer. And was trained as a nurse also.
That's right, I forgot that.
And anyway, they were hiking buddies because they both lived in the same town. And one day they were out hiking, and Jean was telling about this patient-centered medical home initiative that she and Carl were trying to get going. They were wanting 10 primary care offices to participate, and she explained to Lisa what sort of practices they were looking for, and Lisa said, "Huh, that sounds like the practice where I go," which happened to be my practice. So she called me one day and said, would you be interested in participating in this pilot study, or at least talking about it? I would like to have you come over for lunch, and I'll have Jean and Carl come for lunch, and we can chat about it. I was like, sure. So when we talked about it, one of the things was that there was a little extra money to be had, which was important in running your own business, is to have a little extra income. So I thought, sure, what can be so difficult, you know? And brought Sean into the process very early on. Now, the other thing about Sean is that he's a grant writer. So when it came time to submit the application, well, first we had to apply to the Patient-Centered Medical Home Initiative, and we were accepted. I know that there were 10 practices that applied. Only 9 were accepted, so I don't know what their criterion was or any of that. I just know that we were accepted.
You got it. Yeah.
We got it. Anyway, and then we had to apply for recognition as medical home, and I was told that right from the beginning that a nurse practitioner could not have a medical home. I could go through all of the paperwork and do everything that was required, which was all that Anthem cared about, was if I went through those steps and could get a score that was passing, then I could get the extra income
Okay.
and participate in the pilot study.
So that's what your incentive was.
That's what my incentive
That's what your
was.
expectations were.
That's what my expectation was.
And what happened?
Sean worked on this, and as I said, he's a grant writer, so he knew how to tear it apart, to look at it, to break it down into small pieces. And I mention this because I wouldn't have known how to do that. And it's an extremely important skill to have in order to achieve this level of recognition. So he kept saying, it's just not fair, we should be recognized. I'm like, shut up, just do the paperwork. Just do what you have to do. And when we scored 93 out of a possible 100, then I was a little annoyed too, because we couldn't be recognized. And
And it was strictly because then that you were a nurse practitioner, own practice.
That's right.
It wasn't based on
And-
any of the criteria.
And the criteria for NCQA was that the team had to be led by a physician. And there was nothing I could do about it other than whine, fuss, and complain, but I knew that going into it, so there really was nothing I could do about it. And we finally learned what our score was 4 months after we submitted our paperwork,
Wow.
which was 2 months longer than every other practice, because in the contract that you have to sign, physician was the term used in the contract, and saying that everything, had to be led by a physician. And every time physician showed up in that contract, I crossed it out and wrote in provider. Because I'm not a physician, I couldn't sign that I was a physician. So then it had to be reviewed by NCQA's legal team before the paperwork could actually be submitted. So that's what took the extra 2 months. So we submitted it August 31st, and on January 4th, we looked on the website and saw that we had passed and what our score was. Anyway, and unbeknownst to us at the time. But because of the score that we received, NCQA looked at their requirements, and on October 5th, we received NCQA recognition. They changed their
Wow.
rules.
And this was the first time this happened in the United States.
First time in the United States.
It's an amazing story.
There was another practice in Pennsylvania that was another state that participated in this pilot, and they achieved a level 1, but we had achieved a level 3 because of the score, and it was because we had an electronic health record.
You were an early adopter.
It was the first family practice in New London to have an electronic health record. So because of the two of us, but we were the first in the country to, and in Pennsylvania, they don't have full practice, or they didn't have full practice authority.
Right.
So we were the
new
first
gain for them.
nurse practitioner-owned private practice to achieve NCQA recognition.
Well, congratulations on that for
Thank
paving
you.
the way. Kitty, you've had a remarkable career. You've contributed not only to your patients, but to the state of New Hampshire. You've been on the Board of Nursing. You were president of the State Nurse Practitioner Association, a fellow in the American Academy of Nurse Practitioners. Thank you for sharing your story with us today.
Thank you for asking.